So if you've ever led someone, you've probably encountered Mark Says. What is Mark Says? Mark Says is where people underneath you within your organization use you and things that you have said as a shortcut through various conversations. This is a problem, and let's talk about it a little bit. So Mark Says is kind of a jackass. He is incredibly rigid, he doesn't understand what's going on the ground, and he is just forcing things to be in a particular way, because Mark says. So why is that happening? Well, it's a couple of reasons. First of all, because the person who is using this, who's saying Mark says, isn't you, they're not able to adapt. All they know is what you said, or what they remember you saying, or in some cases what they made up that you said. Because they're doing that, they're not able to adapt to the situation on the ground. Where you personally would be like, I don't care how wide you make this text box. Mark Says cares because he said screen real estate is at a premium in some meeting somewhere, or passing someone in the hallway, or maybe never at all. Mark Says it's super rigid because it is that. It's just this echo or shadow of something that may have been said in the past. Some people use it simply because they're trying to follow your vision. Some people use it because they know that it is a shortcut through a discussion or argument. If they can draw a connection back to some form of Mark Says, guess the conversation is over. Because Mark says, and he's the one in charge, so guess we're done talking and I win. But of course, that's not what you want at all, unless you are actually an asshole. What you want is, you want that real conversation to happen. You don't want the specter of some thing you said offhandedly to be driving your project instead of you. Mark Says is going to happen because it's just natural for people to remember things that you've said and draw back to that and use it as a accelerant. So Mark Says sometimes can actually be appropriate. There are certain lines that you absolutely do not cross. Mark Says this game is going to have no nudity in it. So, okay, you've said that, so that's something, that's strong, that's certain. So, in some cases, Mark Says is appropriate, but in most cases, it isn't appropriate. So, how do you avoid this? Well, partially, it is about keeping your door open, keeping that interaction with layers below your direct reports, so that there's some path for this kind of thing to make its way back to you, so you at least know that it's happening. But the other thing that I would recommend is just tell the team that this is a thing that happens. Just say that Mark Says isn't you, Mark Says is an asshole, and if they feel like someone is using your name as a bludgeon to win their argument, that you are available to have that conversation. And sometimes you really did say the thing, but situations change, and you are able to adapt to the situation in the way that this dogmatic specter cannot. And that's why you want to avoid Mark Says, or Bob Says, or Phil Says as much as you can, because it isn't the way you want your decision making to happen. You want that flexibility in order to be adaptable. And adaptability in an industry that is driven by creativity is absolutely vital. Mark Says is something that can actually make your reputation as a leader degrade if you're not paying attention to it. Because if people are interacting with Mark Says more than they're interacting with Mark, then what's happening is your reputation is being set by those interactions, not by the actual interactions they have with you. So you don't want your leaders using your name as a bludgeon to shortcut conversations that they don't want to have. It's very easy to use the person who isn't currently in the room as a weapon to basically end the conversation. There is a very bad conversational habit that some people have where they reference the next most senior person who isn't currently involved in the discussion and cherry pick things that that person has said in order to make that argument. But that's not a very valid way to have a conversation, because that person isn't currently involved in the discussion that's occurring, and you're cherry picking the arguments that you want. If you really want to evoke that person, the only fair way to do it is to get them involved in the conversation, to drag that person in. And then you have to consider well, is this conversation, is this discussion really one that you want to escalate up the chain of reporting? Because effectively that's what you're doing. You're just doing it in a disingenuous way. You're elevating up an imaginary reporting structure using things that a person may have said, but pulling them out of context in order to make your argument. But if you think that that is the way to win your argument, then really the only way to do it is to go to that person for real and actually have that conversation. Mark says, Phil says, Bill says, they are an asshole. They are rigid. They are wrong. And you, as Bill or Mark or Phil, need to try to prevent that sort of shortcutting in the decision making that's happening without you. Because then it's not really decision making at all. It's just the person who can most effectively use your ghost in order to make decisions. A special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you are interested in becoming a member, there will be a link down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, because that will tell YouTube that it is garnering some interest and they will share it around some more. What are some of your most interesting Mark Says moments where the specter of your leadership was used to make a decision that you absolutely would not have made on the ground? Let me know down in the comments, because those are always amusing and or horrifying. I will see you again soon. Thank you.